Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, or maybe even good evening. I will wait 1 more minute so people can dial in. But thank you for joining us. And it would be awesome if indeed if you could use, if you are in the chat, open the chat and share where you are from today. I see Shannon from Cleveland, Ohio. Welcome. Would be great to see where we are. Yes, Anand, Dubai, welcome. Joburg, yeah. Julie, Africa, South Africa, wonderful. Amsterdam, Marco, welcome. Spain. Rome, Sherry, welcome. Toronto, Paris, Chicago, Stuttgart. A pretty good India again. New York City, Belgium, Rotterdam, that's the Netherlands, Australia, wow. Yeah, Austria, yeah, Stuttgart. Singapore. Okay, my friends, I think let's kick it off. I know that there will be a couple of people who will join us shortly. The session will be recorded, so you are aware of that. So we can share it with everyone who has signed up for the session today. First, again, thank you for taking time out of your calendars to be with us today. You know, we hope to have an interactive and exciting conversation with you on work, on you know, who knows, the economy, health, on leadership, on L&D. So a number of exciting topics. But before we get there, just a couple of brief things actually in terms of presentation. Let me see here how this is. Yep. Okay, so you know, on behalf of IE University, a big welcome. You know, we are hosting every month webinars from thought leaders, leading academics, business professionals from around the world. You see a list here. Maybe Christina, if you want to comment on the Center for Corporate Learning Innovation, that would be wonderful for just a minute, so people are familiar with what we are doing.
I would love to. I don't know if you can see me, guys.
Yeah.
Let's see. Can you? Okay. The IE Center, wonderful. The IE Center for Corporate Learning Innovation is an L&D community with more than 2,000 members already all over the world. Our mission is very simple. It's to be useful. And we aim to do that by providing you with tools as these monthly webinars with thought leaders. This is a great example, and also publications, articles, and free assessments to test yourself. And of course, with continuous research on the state of L&D, and also research on new methodologies. Our goal, no matter the pandemic, we want learners to be safe and also to keep alive the learning journey, even improving it with new methodologies. Finally, Nick, I would like to especially welcome our colleagues from IE and a Road program, the International Masterclass of Learning and Development Leadership that are with us today. So thanks so much, and Nick, back to you.
Yeah, no, thanks, Christina. So, folks, you know, from a sharing perspective, I'd like to share 2 articles that I have co-authored recently with 2 of my friends and wonderful colleagues. One, an article on liquid learning. In times of what we call liquid modernity, an article or a publication with Dr. Noémie Le Pertel, and another article reflecting on the challenges that many of us have in terms of how to convert an classroom program in a highly interactive and impactful virtual program. So you can download the articles for free and hope you can you'll benefit from it. One thing in terms of programs, as you know, I'm involved in a number of activities at IE, at 9 Roads, also at the University of Pennsylvania, where there's a wonderful program for doctorate students to become chief learning officers. but there's another program that we will launch next year. And I think this is kind of the right time for it. It's a program on positive leadership and transformation. And this is a one-year program. It's a part-time program. A lot is virtual, but we also come together a couple of times for an immersive experience. So if you want to learn more about it, check out the website from IE, and a very interesting transformational program for typically mid-career professionals. And finally, the next, I'd like to announce the upcoming webinars. One is from my colleague, former colleague, Jackie Bressie, who will talk about authentic confidence, based on a book that Jackie and I co-authored and published in English, and will be published in Dutch in the next couple of weeks. And then in December, we have Simon Brown, who's the Chief Learning Officer from Novartis, who will talk about, learning and development at Novartis, their strategy, what they have been doing, what has changed actually over the last year. So also a very interesting dialogue with him on that. And then from there, actually, in terms of today, we would love to see you actually turn on your video, but make sure that you are on mute. And we hope that you will engage. This is an open discussion that Elliott and I have with all of you about many different topics. So we hope that you will engage and you will participate in the chat room. You ask different questions, and we might do some other activities as well. So that's kind of a little bit the rules of the road for today. And Elliott will start shortly, but I was this morning I was reflecting, Elliott, that it's now almost 2 years ago that we had Learning 2018 in Orlando, and a fantastic event. And I know a number of you are dialing in, have joined Elliott's events over the years. And for me, it has been almost 15, 16 times that I have been in Orlando each year. And the last time was 2018, just before I left McKinsey and, as a CLO, and I joined IE University a year ago in Madrid. So, and also thinking about it, the world has changed a lot. If you reflect on where we are, nobody would have ever expected that we were at the place where we are today. And just for context, and I will turn it over to Elliott, it's reflecting on where we are, it's kind of, to some extent, the perfect storm, unfortunately, where a number of things are coming together. We have a health crisis, we have an economic we have a climate crisis, there are challenges with unemployment, obviously. So a number of all these things are coming together. But also I think that will provide tremendous opportunities for those of us who are involved in developing leaders, helping our people in our organizations, developing capabilities for the future. So a lot of opportunities for all of us. And also in my connecting with a number of you, hearing what's happening actually, I think it's also very exciting how we can help our people. Now, I like to stop here, and I like to, start the dialogue with Elliott today, and we will go back and forth a little bit. And also, again, we like to hear from you about what's on your mind, when it comes to organization, culture, people, development, learning, learning our profession, right? So please use the chat for that. But, Elliott, I'd just like to turn it over to you. Elliott has been a dear friend of mine, and it has been such a pleasure to work with Elliott for so many years on a professional level, but also on a personal level. Many exciting times that we have spent time together as families and talking about a number of things in the world. But Elliott, any kind of opening from your end in terms of, where we are today and any reflections on that?
Well, first of all, Nick, it's wonderful to be with you. I'm coming to you from upstate New York. And hey, Nick, could we maybe not share that so I can kind of see each other big? Would that be okay? Can you?
Yeah, I stopped sharing. Yeah.
Oh, perfect, perfect. Okay,
Yeah.
great. So that way I get to see a larger size Nick. Nick and I have been brothers from different mothers for many, many years, and these are interesting times. It is interesting in the sense of never has the world had a situation where everybody is dealing with something large, unknown, unprecedented, at the same time, and yet doing it in different governments, different cultures, and the like. I think we will learn a lot about learning, and you and I can talk about that in the time ahead. I also think we need to understand that some of the changes that are happening now are not because of the pandemic. There were changes that were ready to happen. There were changes that were happening in a small way. And the pandemic, in many ways, is the accelerator, is the motor behind them. But I also think we will always know, I'm imagining 10 years from now, we will look at somebody and say, you know what? They must have been in university during COVID times. Or they started their business right around COVID times. Or they lost their business around pandemic times. I think this is like a large marker in these times. And I would start our conversation to say there are three things we have to keep in mind. Number one, you have to be able to deal with uncertainty. Uncertainty. All of the things you talk about, I love the word fluid. Uncertainty is our reality. Number two, you must embrace that you need to be a learner in times of uncertainty. Every day I have a list of things that I am learning. Some of them are work things, are personal things and the like. And then the third piece, and I think this is a critical piece of this, which is that you need to be able to try and experiment with multiple approaches, knowing, hoping that a few of them will fail. A few of them will fail because we don't get through times of uncertainty. We don't find ways to be leaders if we're not willing to accept failure will be a natural part of that. And if I have my eyes, my ears, and my heart open, then failure helps me get to success and the like. So I'm excited. I've never spent more time talking to more people wearing my shorts or sweatpants on. And, the only thing that I really miss amongst all of the problems and challenge of the pandemic is that I actually like airplane food. And I know people are going to start leaving right now. But there are things you miss. But I've been blessed to have many good conversations. So let's take it away, my friend. And I will probably inject a little music along the way.
Oh yeah, I love that. Yeah, we love to dance, Elliott. So at one point in time, if we can do some exercise during the session, will be wonderful, right? So, so just like reflecting on this, Elliott, in terms of dealing with uncertainty. If we reflect on that from a neurological perspective, all the science tells us that most of us are not naturally wired to deal with a lot of uncertainty. Most humans like stability, actually. They know what's coming. We like to make a plan. We like to execute on the plan. And also, and secondly, in terms of uncertainty, also there are people, if you look at statistics, they become somewhat nervous, anxious, sober. So what kind of advice do you have for people, right? So it's like, yes, you need to have a mindset to deal with uncertainty, but how do you develop that mindset?
Yeah, I don't think we've done a good job of it, Nick. And I think it's really a problem with leaders. I will give you an example. I just got off of a video call with the chief learning officer doing what you did at McKinsey and Deloitte and other places of an airline. They are about to fire 18,000 people, probably today. Terminate 18,000 people. Nowhere is there a book on how to do that. Now, most interesting is while they're firing 18,000 people, there are many people that are not being fired who will continue to work. So we had a conversation. What do you do when the person asks you, okay, what are the airline's plans for January to March of 2021? Now, you know, in the past, a CEO and a CLO knows Q1, Q2, Q3. They were really good because you know what their answer was? We will tell them, we don't truly know. And here is how together we are going to go forward and in fact make adjustments and hopefully be successful enough that many of those 18,000 people perhaps will come back to work for us. It is, we have to figure out a way to be strong enough, to be honest enough. And those two things are where authenticity comes in and ambiguity. Authenticity, ambiguity. They don't look like they fit together, but they do in a deep way.
Elliott, on a personal level, how have you dealt yourself with uncertainty in life? You know, maybe now, but also maybe in the past, because many things happen to us in life. And what has been your way of dealing with uncertainty and develop a mindset to deal with uncertainty?
I think I view that a lot of things that happen in life happen because of a plan. Some things happen in life because of the cultures that we are in. Some things happen in life almost like a game. They're random. And from a spiritual point of view, there are forces in the world, in the universe, that impact that. I do believe, though, in all of that, that when uncertainty things happen, life gets interesting. I know that's horrible to say. Well, you showed a picture of my conferences. I have built and sold conferences in my life. I sold my big conference that was called TechLearn in August, right before 9/11, about 15 days before 9/11. And the money was in the bank, and I felt horrible about 9/11. It was horrible. But there went the conference business after that. And I think what we need to understand is that sometimes a bad thing happens and we can't control it, but we can understand it. We can deal with it. And so I just finished my last check for my conference came around New Year's Eve. This is not a good year to be in the big conference business at all. But I spent my afternoon with the chief learning officer of Zoom talking about, I don't believe there's Zoom fatigue. I think there's design fatigue. There's nothing wrong with Zoom or SMS, or if we don't design it and everything looks the same, then we lose it in that process.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Elliott. So your second comment was about, you need to be a learner, in this age. And, McKinsey published a report 3 months ago, the future of work in Europe. And they predict actually based on that report that over the next decade, almost 1 out of 3 jobs are in danger.
Yes.
Now, this is a European report, but I've also seen data from other geographies, and the drivers for change are similar in North America, in South America, and in Asia. So there's a huge need for, I think this is the decade of upskilling and reskilling. That's kind of how I think about this decade. But now the question is, what advice do we have? You need to be a learner, but what advice do we have for people who are reflecting on their role and think, oh, wow, the next 10 years, what might happen, right? So is this about micro-learning? Is it about big learning? So what's your thought on that? What do we need to do to make sure that, that people, all of us, are ready for something new, something different?
Let's pretend for a moment, and I know we have wonderful guests from all over the world. I'm jealous. I wish I could be in many of their countries. But let's for a moment go to a different place. I was honored to be the keynote speaker on a learning conference in Africa about 2 years ago, Rwanda. And when I went to Rwanda, I saw a country that had hardship earlier, a lot of technology. In fact, you can read some articles now in Rwanda how they're using drones to map what's going on with the pandemic, and they have one of the lowest rates of infection there. But when I was in Rwanda and we were talking to the ministers of education of 33 African countries, you know what one of them said to me? We don't know the future, and we can't plan for the future. We can plan for what life might become. So we need to look at our skills, but those skills may be in different roles. We need to look at our economy. How do we support people in learning? In other words, what I see in third world countries is their reality is that everything changes and you better be agile. The dilemma when we think colleagues like you and me who come from situations where people can plan out their 40-year career. The reality though, and you know it from your own life, most successful people that you meet are people who had interruption, sudden departures, changes, and so part of what I think we have to do to think about learning, and you know I'm a big fan of Lego blocks, okay? I love Lego blocks, okay? And they would have never been invented in America. I honor these as very wonderful global things. Well, the thing, this is how I view, you know, a career, you know? Meaning it may well be you went to here and then you did this school and then you went to there and then you got this job. But guess what? All of a sudden, suddenly some things change. And now you're there. And then look what comes along. These little Lego blocks. And on the surface, they don't fit in the whole. But if we view learning as a series of components, and people have called them learning objects and the like, but we view them as a series of objects. So I saw that article that you wrote, and I immediately wrote it down because I want to read that article. Now I know what I'll do. I'll read that article, and then I'll probably take the article and put it with some comments and send it back to Nick. But I then may turn around and send it to my friend Rob in Chicago. So if we view knowledge as being important and small and movable, and this is really important, we respect the people and the skills that they have, then learning changes in that process. But if we only view learning in a single way, these are going to be really tough times for us.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Elliott. Another thing I'd like to get your point of view on is on leadership. Leadership in times of turbulence, leadership in times of change, etc. So have you met recently leaders in organizations who you said, you know what, they are doing the right things? And also like, okay, and what are they doing actually in our remote, virtual, turbulent world where it's hard to predict what the future will bring. So can you say a little bit about, leadership,
Well, I'll give you an example that's very, and I don't endorse any technology, but we'll do an example because we're using it. So we're on Zoom, right? Okay. Now Zoom is not a new creature. We had WebEx, we had Microsoft Teams. For those of you who are around long enough, we had Centra and a net meeting and all those other elements. But all of a sudden now Zoom literally has hundreds of millions of users. Now, what does the guy who's the CEO of Zoom do? He decides that there are no schedule for updates. Let's make updates as soon as we have them, okay? We probably will have Zoom go down, and at one point it went down. Let's immediately announce it, apologize, fix it, move forward. In other words, I have watched some people in this technology moment decide that they're going to step up into that process. I was on the phone with somebody who runs restaurants, a very difficult business to be in. She is, as a CEO, not only running the restaurants, she's actually paying for her employees to take some courses online in case the restaurant business doesn't come back. I also think we have to decide, and this is an interesting one, that people need to have empathy. Empathy is, to me, a really big word. I've been running concerts, actually, free concerts on empathy, because I think we need to know empathy doesn't mean sympathy. Empathy means we understand the person we're looking at is different than us. So I want to just show, I'm going to just add a little music to our morning here.
Yeah.
I'm going to just share with you about 2.5 minutes of a concert. And I brought together classroom teachers, okay, teachers for children and teenagers. And I also brought there my friend Richard Collada, who runs a technology and learning association. And I brought some Broadway stars, including Melinda Doolittle, who is a wonderful star on American Idol, to talk about a key word that's important. I want you to look at and I play it, the 3 teachers. They're on the bottom of the screen, because life sometimes requires that we have some respect. So here we go, Nick. Hopefully technology will work, and you know, the folks at Zoom will make it work here, but we'll turn this on.
What you want, baby, I got it. What you need, you know I got it. All I'm asking is for a little respect when you come home. Hey, baby, when you get home. Hey, hey, hey. I ain't gonna do you wrong while you're gone. I ain't gonna do you wrong, 'cause I don't wanna. All I'm asking, hey, is for a little respect when you come home. Hey, baby, when you get home. Hey, yeah. I'm about to give you all my money.
Well, we could go listen to that for a much longer time. But if you watched at the bottom of the screen, I'm going to actually ask people on the chat here, okay? So go ahead and point to panelists and attendees. What did you see the people on that Zoom call? And by the way, we had eventually a couple thousand people watch that. But what did you see those teachers and artists and even Elliott do on that Zoom call? Just type a word into the moving, Britta said. Okay, Miriam, she is kind of feeling the Aretha vibe. Smiles, having fun, okay? Smiling, dancing, joy, movement, waving hands, connecting, happiness. Let's understand, this was a leadership action. It was a leadership action. Okay, I, as the leader of that experience, decided, let's add some energy. Let's add some life into stuff. And I believe that to cope in a leadership environment with difficult times, we need music. I read about, way back in World War II, in the literally in the shelters, the bomb shelters, there would often be people singing during the bombing raids. Even from my heritage of my relatives died in the concentration camps, but even there, people added music. So empathy is so important. Empathy is so important. And I'll have another piece of music for you in a few minutes there. But Nick, what did you feel when you saw Melinda? You've met her before.
No, I've met her, and I think it's a fantastic to do this also virtually, and indeed, to get the energy going, and also to kind of zoom up, the session, Elliott, right? So you think about Zoom fatigue, but it's design. It's like, and emotions. I think music. I think it's also a key energy re-energizer for people, right? So we listen to music; it will help us to be in a good mood. So Yeah, love it, Elliot.
Yeah, and let me give you just another example. This would not be music, but I decided that I needed to have a new picture of me from the pandemic. So I found an artist online in LinkedIn. She's from Pakistan. And for $90, I asked her, I sent her a couple of pictures. I said, I want a pandemic picture. So it has my hair a little longer, even though Kathy makes it there. And it's got my shirt up there and I like, but I wanted my picture not to be from a perfect studio 10 years ago or giving a speech in front of 1,000 people. I wanted in some ways to reflect the reality of our times. I, in fact, keep something. It's sort of interesting. I have it over here. I keep a list because of all the meetings I'm in like you are. You know what I have on the list? The names of the dogs and cats of the people I see in meetings. And of their children's name and their spouse's name. Because empathy, in part, is understanding the whole person is working with you. The whole person. And right now we want to do task and we want to do well in our business, but we also have to support the whole person. And you know that, Nick, you've been just an amazing advocate of the holistic view of what leaders need to do.
No, thanks, Elliot. So what I like to, so there are a number of people, colleagues, friends in the session today who are in a role in L&D and leadership development, and as Christina mentioned, and about 28 of them are in the new masterclass that we are running. If you reflect on the profession, so in terms of where we are, what has happened over the last 6 months, but also where are we going? What do you see as the big trends? What are the big things that, if you are currently in L&D, you need to pay attention to?
My number one is curation, And what I mean by curation is the ability of the employee to find the right information, the right resource, the right expertise, the right feedback at the right moment, in a way that in my world is 1 click away, not 12 clicks away, and maps to the company or corporate strategy and needs. Ironically, we're much better at curating in our own personal lives, because we have these curation devices with us, But interestingly enough, at work, how do I find that right graphic? How do I talk to that right person who's had a meeting maybe with Nick Van Dam before and gives me a little context of that? And for all the systems that we have right now, learning systems, learning experience systems, I still don't think we have the right curation ecology and environment. We don't even have, I want on my mouse here, I want a third button that says later. So I can click on something and it goes into the later pile, So I actually think curation is one. The other two that are really important for me, Nick, one of them is, I think, an interesting element, which is design. We need to make sure that we design things well. So a lot of people have said they're so tired being online all the time. They've been on WebEx for an hour and a half. Well, I know if I do a design and if it goes over 60 minutes, I know my body starts to say, Elliot, you really need to go to the bathroom, or you need to do, you need to do something else. I actually think we have to become great at design, and I don't mean traditional instructional design. I really mean design where we look at what are we learning from the graphics area, what are we learning from Disney, what are we learning from TikTok, what are we learning from young kids and the like. The third area, and I think it's an important one, is data. Nick, and you and I have talked about this a lot. A lot of what we do is based on our tradition. It's not necessarily based on data. So there was a company in South Africa that I have been spending time with, and they teach people to work in the mines. And it's very important in South Africa for them to have people who are ready to work in the mines. And suddenly they couldn't, in the pandemic, do their normal onboarding. So they moved their onboarding to a more online piece, just as we've seen leadership programs. The biggest mistakes we can make is let's do it the same way we did it physically. Doesn't work that way. So suddenly leadership or onboarding gets changed radically. And we need to use data to say, what if we didn't onboard 10 people and we did the other 10? Let's look at the difference. What if our leadership program was long in one situation and compressed in another situation? So I believe we need data, and I think our learners need data. I would love to look at a dashboard every day that told me what do I need to know, what's changed since last night, what am I curious about, who's somebody I haven't talked to in a year, and I do that every day. I now send a note to somebody I haven't talked to in a year. It's my pandemic mission, if you will, and I get wonderful conversations going. So I think data is important, and I think the learning field, we need to get better at data analytics, data analysis, and not focus on the easy data, but go to the meaningful data. And Nick, you have been such an advocate of this in your life and in this program. You know, data is not giving somebody a grade. Data is understanding the reality, the evidence of what the situation that we're in.
Yeah, thanks, Elliott. If I reflect on it, I can't agree more. You know, in terms of curation, you know, like in our leadership programs, you know, because there's such an information overload, right? So there's so much out there, and people need to understand what really matters, right? So what are the most important things for me to use? But also, as an example, I have in one of the programs an Hungry Heart section. We say, okay, here are 10 more videos, articles on these specific topics. So if you have more time, if you're motivated, just go there, right? So that's in terms of the design, I believe, yeah, indeed, it's all about how can we put ourselves in the shoes of the learner. It's all about human-centric design. And again, if you read the article that I showed earlier, we talk about that. And in terms of data, Elliott, one question I have is that there is a school of thought, not per se in learning, but overall, there are people who are saying, well, the future is just about, you know, we make decisions on data. It's all about predictive analytics, etc. And there's another school of thought that, well, you know what, intuition, right? So because the data are only from the past, and how good is your predictive analytics if it's based on the past? So any thoughts on that, intuition versus, you know, the big data and analytics?
Well, I am this interesting schizophrenic person or bipolar person when it comes to some of these either or. I think it's both. I think intuition is the way we organically process predictive data. You know, when I was much younger, I had an opportunity, and people would say, in psychology, are you a humanist or a behaviorist? You know, are you, you know, well, I had an opportunity to meet Carl Rogers, the sort of father of a humanistic approach. And he said, I love behaviorism. I do both. You know, so I actually think it is both, Nick. I think we need to find a way to have data visible. You know, I'll give you an interesting one. Just yesterday, my wife and I were driving our car from New York City, and a woman was getting her car from the parking garage before me. And she was talking very quickly to the parking garage attendant, who spoke English, but his first language was Spanish. I could see in 1 minute that the way she was talking, he didn't understand, and he didn't feel good about that. He didn't understand it. But there was no data there. She wasn't looking at him. Now, I've got a fantasy. What if somehow her phone vibrated and said, slow down, you're talking to a brilliant person in Spanish, and you're talking to him in English, and you have a mask on, and he can't understand you. Like, I actually think the more we understand data, it lets us communicate to somebody. It's interesting. We found a data point, talk about data. When you go to university and English is not your first language, or whatever, it could be German or Spanish. I'll use Spanish, okay? So if I'm going to university, my parents vive en Calpe, cerca de Alicante, para 2 años. But okay, so I know a little Spanish, but my intelligence in Spanish is way down from my English one. So if I go to a university in Spain, it's very likely that I hope and pray that they record the seminar. Why? Because I'll probably listen to it again slower. And what we're finding now, a lot of people, if the webinar is recorded, don't listen to it live. If English isn't their first language, they play it back at their own speed. Now, sometimes I listen in English and I play it back at 3 times the speed because I want to get through it quick. But I think we need data. The learner needs data to respect what is their reality. Can I give you one other one to add? I gave you 3, but and I'm going to put the word. I'll say the word, and I'm going to see what our participants say here. To me, one of the most important skills that somebody in learning needs to understand, embrace, and practice is storytelling. Storytelling. Now, I just said the word storytelling. Type, what do you, when I say the word storytelling, what word pops up? What do you think about when I say storytelling? Okay. Engagement. Okay, Rob said. Zlantina says sense making. Robin says journey. Anad, okay, never forget a story. Tapping into human emotions. I actually think a tremendous amount of what we do in the learning field is that we figure out how to engineer an empathetic approach to storytelling that is efficient in that sense and moving. Now, I'm going to show you another little piece of video, okay? There are stories that have come out of the pandemic. And sadly, I now know 12 people that have died of COVID and probably about 40 or 50 people who got sick with it. Well, what you may not know, Nick knows this, is my wife and I are also producers of Broadway musicals. Kinky Boots, Come From Away, that's going to be in many of your countries and the like. Sadly, some of our actors got COVID and some of them died. But I recently did a concert and I literally brought 2 actors, and you're going to see them in about 30 seconds. Patty Murin and Colin Donnell. Now, they happen to be married. She was in the show Frozen. He's on a TV show called Chicago Med. And they got married, and she's pregnant. And then, sadly, at 6 months of a pregnancy, they found out she had COVID. So she had to be in the hospital pregnant. And we didn't even know what happens to a woman with a baby that's growing in that sense. Now, the good news, she made it. The baby was born, and they are living in a small little apartment in New York. And by the way, they've not had a chance to do what they do for a living, which is sing in musicals. All our theaters are closed. So I did a video conference, and I asked Patty and Colin to sing. Now, you're going to see them with a dog, and that's part of it. But you're also going to see that her baby, who's newly born, and she's keeping the baby healthy, is wrapped up in her shirt. Now, you're going to see storytelling here. They're singing a song, but as I'm sharing with you, there's another story here. So Nick and friends, let's just go for a moment and see, and it's called Love is an Open Door.
Can I just say something crazy?
Sure.
I love crazy.
All my life has been a series of doors in my face. And then suddenly I bumped into you.
I was thinking the same thing, 'cause like, I've been searching my whole life to find my own place. And maybe it's the party talking, or the chocolate fondue.
But with you,
I found my
I
place.
see your face.
And it's nothing like I've ever known before. Love is an open door. Love is an open door. Love is an open door. With you, with you, love is an open door.
Now, 1 minute and 45 seconds of video. There was a story there. There was a story. And so I actually think, and I don't know what you felt when you looked at it, I was happy they were singing. I was happy she was alive. I was amazed that her baby was there. And I really enjoyed the dog, you know, in that process. But storytelling is a big piece of us. And I have to think, and Nick, you and I have talked about this. A lot of the storytelling we do in corporate learning actually is a sleep-making drug. We can give somebody a 40-slide, boring PowerPoint that will put them to sleep. You woke up when you saw them. You woke up when you heard respect. And so we need to bring energy into our storytelling. We even may do something that's quite unusual, okay? You notice what I'm doing? I'm actually standing up. Do you know how much of the pandemic has been done sitting down? But your energy is different when you're standing up. Now I have to adjust the lights and things like that, you know, because being a Broadway producer, I know, for instance, I have really good lights here. Now watch. I'm going to turn the lights off. I'm going to become 10 years older. I'm the young age of 70. I'm going to become 80 by visual, and I'm going to make 10 kilos more weight. Watch. Okay, but I'm saying the reason why I'm paying attention to what my camera does, I'm paying attention as you are to what your background is, to my microphone, because guess what we're doing now? We're doing storytelling. Nick and I are telling stories, and we've got to be experts at storytelling. Now we go back. We have to gain data. Okay, how long is the story? We've got to have a fluid model. We've got to be engaging in that process. Yeah, so.
Well, thanks, Elliott. Yeah, and you know, we started to talk about a little bit reskilling and upskilling. And you know, as you mentioned, we need to be learners. We need to try out new things. We need to deal with uncertainty, flexibility, etc. And kind of one short story on my end, and my colleague from Nyan Road might be in the session today, but you know, it was a wonderful new colleague joined Nyan Road and helping with my program. And she introduced herself, and then I was home and I want to send her an email, and I thought, let's look her up on LinkedIn, right? The first thing what you do. And I looked her up on LinkedIn, and the header said, I'm looking for a job. So I sent her an email and said, okay, you have to you know, change your LinkedIn profile because it's, you're open for a new job.
Yeah.
And she replied to me, she said, have you seen my entire LinkedIn profile? And I said, honestly, I did not. She said, well, I'm an airline pilot. You know, I was laid off. And if I look at the entire industry, you know, for the next couple of years, very difficult to find a role. So I decided to do something else. I'm detailed focused. You know, I know how to make things happen, etc. And I'm also big on learning. So I thought, okay, let's just join Nyan Road University in a very different role. So just, you know, a story about, you know, changes in the workforce. And it gets me to the next question, Elliott. What I'm also hearing actually from my L&D colleagues in the field, they are saying, Nick, you know, what will the future look like for our profession? You know, so, you know, if you think about in 10 years from now, a lot of roles will change or disappear. What will happen with L&D? Yeah. And one comment on that too is, you know, the program that I started, has 28 participants with average age 47.
Yes.
49.
Yes.
So 48. So it's also fascinating that a number of people say, wow, I have at least another 20, 25 years ahead of me. And this profession is changing very fast. So if I don't upskill, reskill myself, I might be one of those who will be out of a job in less than 5 years.
Yeah.
Elliott, any thoughts on that?
Well, it's changed. You know, when I started in the field, I've been doing learning 50 years, 50 years. When I started, Nick, there was a mailing list that I could buy of about 175,000 people in the United States who were in L&D. Now, it's about 10,000 on that list. Now, doesn't mean that there are less people doing learning, but there are probably less people who call themselves learning and development. You know, they are pilots who are subject matter experts. I actually believe that learning and development is a skill set. I think it is an art. I think it is a field of knowledge. I'm not sure, though, that we will be the producers of learning. I view myself, I said it earlier, we're going to be the curators of learning. We know that most learning that happens when somebody talks to another employee or colleague at work and they get some knowledge. You know, a class is wonderful. You and I love classes, but the average employee goes to maybe 1.5 classes a year. And by the way, if they're white collar, if they are in if they are in a manufacturing, they may go to 1 class every 5 years. But every day there's learning. So I feel that the learning field is going to have fewer people who are full-time in it. But I literally have a friend who's about to become the chief learning officer. And you know what she said to her CEO? I never want to have more than 10 people work for me. But I want to have 5,000 people in the organization who are going to support what learning will be. So I think that's the transformation. I don't know if we'll always call it learning. I have friends who like the word performance, who like the word support. And I do have a little hunch. We just did interviews, and I'll have a free ebook out on the 12th of October with 300 learners around the world in the pandemic. You know what we found? They want to learn every day, but they don't want to be a student. They want to learn every day, but they don't necessarily want to go into a structured webinar or e-learning, environment. So I think there's going to be a whole lot of learning, but we may not call it that. It's I think going to become, once again, it's going to become more organic. And that's why I love things like empathy and storytelling and fluidity and some of the other words. But you know what? If you have good skills as a learning person, you can do everything from being a CEO to deciding that your job is to teach Spanish to people across the world at 11 o'clock at night via Skype. That's the learning field is that varied. But we need leaders in that who have the skills that you are emphasizing. It's really important.
Yeah, thanks, Elliott. And one specific question that has been raised quite a bit as well to me, and that is a little bit to the classroom. If you're referring to, if you look at classroom learning, and particularly let's look at leadership development. There are people who are telling me now, Nick, this has been an amazing transformation with all the tools, and we believe from a cost efficiency, perspective, after COVID, we will continue to be online with all leadership development. That's kind of one school of thought. Another number of people tell me, Nick, we have to work more from home than ever before. So as a consequence, now we will be on systems, on platforms, 10 hours a day, right? So, and I can't wait to see people, to be live with someone in a place where we can talk, where we can kind of, touch, etc. So no, there's a huge, the need actually for being together will just increase.
Yeah.
So what's your take on those two sides of the spectrum?
Well, let's not get stuck in today's image. We never imagined that we would be able to put, 800 people on a Zoom call or 100 on a WebEx call. But I would argue we haven't done the design yet. So right now, Nick, we have you and me in two boxes here. What if there was a third box right now, okay, in which we could put this here, and you and I could both move that object? So suddenly our conversation could be a coaching session on how to do something, where we literally would be able to not only be together, I can see you, I can hear you, but where we could actually start to touch some things, whether it be data together or objects together. I think that's part of it. I had a wonderful opportunity to listen to Rob Cross yesterday, who's a brilliant guy on collaboration. He said, we need to understand when we're together with people, what is it that they really need? What is it that they need? Because very often we have meetings, but we don't get to what the people really need. In many cases, by the way, what they need is 3 minutes with a manager to hear what's really going on. Or they need to hear some things really well. I've got one more quick song I want to sneak in before we have to roll into the end. But, I think it's really important in learning, even though I make fun sometimes of lessons, we've got to learn our lessons well, okay? And I want to share with you Telly Leong, who is a wonderful colleague and partner with me on learning, and Lindsay Mendez, who won a Tony Award. But I asked him to sing a quick song. We'll just play a couple minutes of it, that we need to make sure that as people in learning, we learn our lessons well. And he's now, think about it, he's playing live on a Zoom call on a piano in his apartment. Here you go.
A swath of sinners sitting yonder, and they're acting like a pack of fools. They're gazing into space, they let their minds all wander, instead of studying the good Lord's rules.
Still got it.
Better pay attention, build your comprehension. There's gonna be a quiz at your ascension, not to mention any threat of hell. If you're smart, if you're smart, if you're smart, you'll learn your lessons well.
So I think it's really important that in the learning world, we help all of the people in the world learn their lessons well. Some of them are from the curriculum, some of them are from life, some of them are from each other with empathy, with care. I don't want to be in the delivery business. I don't care how many people came to a webinar. I care what the impact of working with people are about. So, yeah, that's our crazy view in this wonderfully ambiguous, uncertain time,
Elliott, I'd like to take one or two questions from the chat. One question is from Noah, and she says, well, if you reflect on Andy Grove, the founder, the Intel former CEO, he always said, bad companies are destroyed by crisis, and good companies survive them. What are your thoughts on that? What do good companies need to do? Great companies need to do to survive and be successful in this crisis?
I believe that I have never met a company that was created to make money and succeeded. Every company that I've met that has been successful was created to solve a problem, to make a difference, to have an impact, and then if you do it well, and the market is right, and the time is right, you can make a lot of money. But I've met Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, Steve Wozniak, Dean Kamen. I have met those people, and you want to know what they did? They created something that was solving a problem. So I actually agree. Bad times will create positive opportunities for smart, empathetic, and engaged people that we work with.
Yeah, I can't agree more. I think it's all about the purpose-driven organizations, right? So it starts with that. Purpose is not about making money, right? So that will happen if you do the right thing at the end of the day. Yeah. So Elliott, my last question. There are a number of students also dialing in today. People are completing their master degree, bachelor degree this year, and they hope to enter the workforce over the next 6 to 12 months. Any advice you have for those folks? They are reflecting on this time, the first time in their life actually that they are part of a crisis like this. Any thoughts that you have for them?
Own, make it your brand that you are good at learning. When you go to an interview, bring 1 or 2 of the books that you're now reading with you, even if it's a Zoom one. Own that you are capable of learning to do new things with teams that are important. And finally, don't tell me what you want your career to be. Tell me where your passion, your excellence, your curiosities are. Because you want to know something? Nick, you know this really well. Okay, the people that have succeeded didn't succeed because they followed a step-by-step path to get there. They lived the moment. And when living the moment, you will succeed when it's time. Now, you will fail a few times. I got fired. I got fired at the age of 26. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. Because the person who fired me said, "You're not very good as an employee, Elliott. Go start your own company." And that's what I did. So yes, things may fail, but if we're good, it's not a straight path. It's not. I know if people will tell it to you, but it's not. Just go and randomly look at 50 people in LinkedIn, and the successful ones had interruptions, had changes, had little failures. I have a friend, chief learning officer, one of the largest companies in the world, just retired. Wow, retired at a moment like this? What's his future going to be? An amazing future. What's it like? I have no idea. But you want to know something? I'm going to have a lot of fun watching him, supporting him, playing with him, teaching with him, because really the pathway to the future is not a structured set of steps, but reaching higher, reaching out, reaching inside, and making sure, to be blunt, that you have love, care, family, and friends. And for my colleagues who are here in the United States, vote. Because the future is only when you actually can vote and your vote counts and you can decide what the future will be. So please, go vote. And for my friends in the rest of the world, I sometimes have to apologize for what we do. But I will tell you, I'm voting.
Okay. Elliott, this was wonderful as always. Thank you so much for being with us today, with the whole community. I can't wait that we are together again in Saratoga Springs, in the near future. So friends in L&D, other students, thank you for staying with us today. Cristina Fernandez, thank you so much for hosting, organizing the event. And I wish you all the best the rest of the week, and hope we connect soon on the next webinar or in one of the classes. I wish you all the best.
And Nick, con mucho gusto, Hasta la vista.
Let me start.